dig on that a little more. We have a lot of clients who you nailed it. Over the course of their lives, they've accumulated a good wealth of real estate. They're actively managing. They depreciated a long time. Cost segregation, accelerated depreciation. They've done all the right things. Now they're carrying a bunch of low basis stuff. They are tired of chasing down renters. They're tired of kind of being in charge. Their kids don't want to take over. So our obvious answer is, hey, go look at the Delaware Statutory Trust, and then hold it, pass away, get step up, and then your kids can do what you want. And that's easy for me as a tax nerd to say because I have literally no idea how they work outside of I know you get 1031 into them. So can you give some examples of when that? Well, first of all, a little bit more on the Delaware Statutory Trust, and then ultimately, when it works, when it doesn't work, what are the pros and cons of rolling all the way into that and kind of setting it and forgetting it versus just paying the tax bill and moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few options just so folks know, like there are folks who have, I'll call it smaller syndications that you can do with our called tenant in common interests that achieve that goal where you get involved with a real estate operator and do that. So those are options. And as are sort of these so-called UPREIT transactions where you can contribute property and receive tax deferred treatment and get into broader portfolios. But I'd say, the Delaware Statutory Trust has over the last 15 years really evolved a lot. It is a individual or set of properties that are put into a trust. That trust then syndicates the membership units to investors. And I would think of it like a shareholder in a property. Inside of that structure, there's some requirements because the IRS wanted, and this has all been litigated at this point and been blessed. The IRS wants it to be sort of a static set or individual property in a trust. So if you have one property, let's just give a quick example. You have a duplex and you want to get that diversification. And there's all kinds of property types, all kinds of sizes and different flavors. And, to talk Delaware Statutory Trust, I think is a very long conversation to have. But the short of it is you could, as a hypothetical, sell your property. You have a massive amount of gains and depreciation recapture and other taxes you would otherwise pay. That is likely not a smart move.
Right.
So you can, if you are looking to achieve a broader diversified or managed property base, I'd say Delaware Statutory Trust with really professional managers, which I think, work with your advisor to really vet the deals that you get involved with, just to make sure you're in the right stuff. But you can go rotate hypothetically into one or a series of apartment complexes. So you went from one duplex, let's say in Los Angeles, to suburban Dallas, 300 unit multifamily. I'm making up a hypothetical. And then you would go and exchange your property, and those proceeds would be reinvested in trust units in a Delaware Statutory Trust. And that trust owns the property. That property pays, there's a sponsor of the trust that has orchestrated the transaction. They do the property management for a fee. There are some fees that they have to put the transaction together. All of that's fully disclosed and can be reviewed with you and your advisors. And then ultimately you come into an ownership of a 200 unit multifamily complex in suburban Dallas. Or you could go into a trust that has even bigger real estate holdings and more diversified if you wanted, or smaller, more specific, the world's your oyster. Or you could go into two trusts, right? Like one by one manager, one from another, and rotate it. All of that just needs to be planned and thought about and worked inside of the time constraints that are present for 1031 exchanges. But yes, it can achieve a lot of goals. You go from active to passive. You go from concentrated to non-concentrated. You can go from one area to a broader set of areas if you so desire. And I think it can be a very helpful tool in that case, specifically for lots of clients. I think it is a really nice product now.
That's awesome.